This discussion today is for everyone, but my primary goal here today is to impress upon our FileMaker developers that there is real value in maximizing their use of keyboard shortcuts. And to clarify, I'm not talking about the shortcuts that we create via custom menus for our end users. I'm talking about shortcuts that help you, the FileMaker developer, do your job. Shortcuts, by their very definition, provide accelerated alternatives for accomplishing tasks. Their convenience may seem minuscule, and for those most frequent tasks where muscle memory is perfectly content with the status quo, changing up the routine for a seemingly nanoscopic gain will strike some as more trouble than it's worth, but I assure you it is not. I will demonstrate how simply taking advantage of the already available FileMaker native keyboard shortcuts can deliver a cumulative efficiency with tangible value. First, a brief origin story, because I gotta talk. This is the origin for my passion behind the topic. Now, one of my very best friends from high school, Denise, she worked the graveyard shift at a company named Pace Publications. Their clients included nearby aerospace companies such as Hughes and Rockwell, and they require quick overnight turnarounds of high-quality documents and presentations, and Denise was among their best. So when I was tasked with producing a well-formatted newsletter on my Mac using some newly installed software that I was not familiar with, I called on Denise to get me started. I soaked in everything she had to offer in the brief hour she had to share, and by morning my 8-page newsletter with all this PageMaker was ready to go. Now the reason I'm sharing this with you now, some 37 years later, is because I will never forget her very first words of advice to me. Learn and use the keyboard shortcuts. I took that to heart not only with PageMaker at the time, but a short time later with FileMaker and everything else that I've used since. But why have I really chosen to discuss a topic that on the surface sounds so simple and seemingly obvious to experienced FileMaker developers? Well, we all know Harmonic is striving to be more efficient and efficacious. And by adopting more time-saving methods to perform our most common tasks, we can each contribute toward the corporate goals while enhancing our individual performance and expanding our own skill sets. And there's always room for improvement, even in a team with as much talent and experience as ours. To demonstrate the substantial time savings that can be achieved with keyboard shortcuts, I will be sharing 2 brief demos that were published a while back by Daniel Wood of Digital Fusion. To set the scene, we'll have a layout with some fields and labels scattered about and a couple of other objects. The goal will be to properly align everything nicely. In this first video, no keyboard shortcuts are used, just the inspector and contextual menus. Let's take a look. So, sorry camera, I have to turn to look and see what they're doing. So the first thing we're doing is we have this big box in the background. We're going to move that to the back and lock it. Then we're going to grab our fields, we're going to align them, then we're going to start moving them around a little bit. We want those, shorter fields to be up at the top group. Get all those guys, then we're going to distribute them evenly. We've got to take the border off of this one. Then we're going to grab our labels, start moving them a little closer to where they're going to end up. And then we're going to resize them so they're all the same height as our fields. Something we do pretty often. Then we're going to align the first label with the first field and the last label with the last field. And we'll distribute those after aligning them to the left, as we saw there. And then we'll distribute those so they match up. Then we'll basically align the labels with the bottom 2 fields as well. And last but not least, we're going to change the text position in those larger fields. And we have to go to a different inspector tab for that, and we're done. Looked to me like a tremendous amount of interaction with the mouse going on there. Our second demo performs the exact same tasks, but using keyboard shortcuts instead. Pay attention to the lower right corner of the demo to see the shortcuts that are actually being used. We start with our same layout, just like it was. Grab that object, align. I'm going to do a little bit of manual moving of these fields so they get closer to the area they want to end up in. Distribute them. Now we do have to use our mouse in order to take borders off. We don't have keyboard shortcuts for those yet. Those fields moved around. Let's resize them. Now again, we're going to align our first field with its first label, same with the bottom, and then we will align left and distribute those top fields. And lastly, we'll change our text position, and we're done. So to recap, without using shortcuts, it took 69 seconds. Not bad, they were pretty focused on what they were doing. But replacing the button clicks and menu selections with shortcuts, the very same actions took only 45 seconds, a savings of 24 seconds, which means that keyboard shortcuts reduce the effort and time over 35%. I think that's impressive. Would you agree? Feedback from the group? All right. Now, this was just a 1-minute example, and of course we aren't all doing layout work all the time, so how much this applies to you is for you to decide. But imagine what might it look like if we were to compound those incremental gains. Now we all know 35% of our hourly rate is $70. Assuming talent costs of 82%, we could be saving the company upwards of $106 an hour. And that amounts to potentially substantial savings for every 30 hours of development time. Not a waste of time, a savings. Now your mileage may vary as well as will your most frequently performed task, but Woods considers layout mode the most important area for learning and using shortcuts. Personally, I may or may not agree with that depending on what I'm doing at the time. Specifically though, because so much of layout development consists of an adjust and refine and preview cycle that can repeat for hundreds of iterations. Now imagine if you could double or even triple the speed at which you carry out the multitude of individual minor tasks that you perform, simply by memorizing and committing keyboard shortcuts to your muscle memory. Now, we know we are a talented group of experienced FileMaker developers, are we not? We are. So I'm not going to point out anyone in particular, but suffice it to say, our inefficiencies, each on their own mere increments of tiny bits of time, are plentiful. And none of us lack room for improvement. However, our time today is limited, so I will resist the temptation to vent. Instead, I will share a few of my favorite examples, some of which may or may not sound familiar to one or more of you. Again, not pointing any fingers. They're all in my fist. All right, so how about selecting Layout Manager from the Manage menu instead of using the quick and simple shortcut? Or similarly, opening the Scripts menu to select Script Workspace. Or, one of my favorites, selecting the Edit Layout button to enter layout mode, which requires an open toolbar, which you may or may not have at the time, then using the Exit Layout button to return to browse mode, and similarly using the Preview button when you need to preview. When without need of the toolbar, you could instead use the simple single modifier keys of Command L for layout, B for browse, and U for preview. Here's an example of something we do pretty often, which is changing layouts. We happen to be in the docs.eXp file, and as you can see, the pull-down list is long. The layouts are not sorted alphabetically. And they're in assorted groups that some developer or group of developers over the course of time independently chose to put things in. So finding layouts this way is not my favorite approach. I prefer using my keyboard shortcut to open the layouts, use the filter, find my layout, and open it, which of course opens in a separate window. Now, of course, we all know that this may or may not be the best approach, because what if you have a found set in that original window? You want that same found set in the other layout. If you were paying close attention, you would have noticed that I entered layout mode in my new layout. I got the layout number And now in my original window, I've gone into layout mode and simply put in the layout number and return to browse. Much faster than dealing with the pull-down menus. And just for reference, Docs.eXp, ISS Data, and ISS Billing all have over 200 layouts each. ISS UI has over 400. Don't ever pull down the menu when you have Layout Manager available. All right. So where you should begin depends entirely on the task that you perform most. According to shortcutworld.com, there are over 200 FileMaker keyboard shortcuts. And yes, there is such a site. Now, if you're still not convinced by the efficiency alone, let me close with a quick rundown of benefits. Keyboard shortcuts reduce strain and fatigue by minimizing mouse use, helping maintain a neutral wrist posture and requiring less finger travel than menu navigation, supporting better ergonomics and reducing the risk of repetitive stress injuries. And I can say that with the mouse pad on the laptop, the same is still true. Keyboard shortcuts boost efficiency by enabling faster task execution, streamlining workflows through reduced repetition, and minimizing the need to switch between keyboard and mouse, helping you stay focused and productive. But wait, there's more. Keyboard shortcuts also offer a low-cost, accessible way to improve ergonomics by encouraging better posture, reducing mouse dependence, and supporting healthier typing habits, contributing toward and representing a proactive commitment to your own physical well-being. And who doesn't want that? So, thank you for your time, and who's ready to start boosting their efficiency?